Today, we're zooming in on the hidden figures and the incredibly diverse coalition that made one of history's most legendary stands even possible, the resistance at Haldighati. When we think of epic battles, our minds usually go straight to kings and emperors clashing on horseback. But the truth? The actual survival of a resistance is almost always found in the margins. It's found among the people who bankrolled the fight and the indigenous communities who literally held the ground. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture the late 16th century. The Mughal Emperor Akbar is executing this massive imperialist expansion across the entire Indian subcontinent. Through a mix of overwhelming military might and strategic diplomatic marriages, nearly all the Rajput states were submitting to Mughal overlordship. But then you have this one state, Mewar, led by Maharana Pratap, who just absolutely refused to surrender its sovereignty. So the big question is, how exactly does a tiny kingdom stand up to the wealthiest, most powerful empire in the whole region? To answer that, we actually have to pan the spotlight away from the thrones for a second. Instead, we're going to focus on two completely different pillars of society that acted as the real backbone of Mewar's fight for freedom. We're talking about a brilliant financial genius and a fierce community of indigenous warriors. Because without them, Maharana Pratap's legendary resistance would have been crushed in a matter of months, for sure. To really grasp their importance, we have to look at the sheer scale of what went down on June 18, 1576, at the yellow-soiled Haldighati Pass. The contrast here is just staggering. The Mughal army, led by Raja Mansingh I, rolled in with roughly 28,000 fully equipped troops and heavy artillery. Maharana Pratap, on the other hand, commanded only about 7,000 men. It's basically 4-to-1 odds. But if you look closely at Pratap's ranks, it wasn't just Rajputs. He had around 3,000 Bhil tribesmen, plus a crucial contingent of Afghan warriors led by Commander Hakim Khan Suri. So what you have is this incredibly diverse underdog coalition going toe-to-toe with an imperial giant. Now, the battle itself was completely brutal. And while it technically ended in a tactical stalemate, meaning Pratap wasn't captured, the Mughals did ultimately hold the field. The aftermath for Mewar was devastating. Pratap's resistance was practically broke, severely demoralized, and literally pushed to the brink of extinction. The king and his scattered army had to retreat and hide out in the rugged Aravalli hills, facing starvation and a total lack of resources to keep the fight going. And this is exactly where our first unsung star steps into the frame, Bhamashah. Born into an Osmal Jain family, Bhamashah was a hugely successful merchant. He was the Nagar Seth. Think of that as the chief city banker of Chittor, and just a highly capable administrator. While a lot of wealthy folks might have just protected their assets by playing nice with the new Mughal reality, Bhamashah stepped right up during this existential crisis. He proved unequivocally that true patriotism isn't just about swinging a sword on a battlefield. It's about leveraging whatever resources you have for the survival of your people. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of sacrifice. Bhamashah, along with his brother Tara Chand, approached Maharana Pratap in what was arguably his darkest hour, and they basically handed over their entire accumulated personal and family wealth. We're talking about 2 million gold coins. In the 16th century, that is an astronomical sum. It represented the complete dismantling of their personal estates, all for the sake of the kingdom's sovereignty. But they didn't stop there. They also provided 25 million silver rupees. Again, to put that into perspective for the time, it's a staggering absolute game changer of an amount. This massive financial injection was the exact lifeline Mewar desperately needed. It literally bought them time. It fed starving soldiers, it bought new weapons, and it funded a 50,000-strong army for years to come. But Bhamashah, he didn't just write a massive check and walk away. Not at all. He utilized his administrative brilliance to turn what was basically an ideological struggle into a practical, sustainable political movement. He rolled up his sleeves, restored civil administration, managed revenue collection in heavily contested areas, and even acted as a military general. He was out there conducting guerrilla raids on Mughal supply lines to keep the resistance funded. Talk about doing it all. Now, you might be wondering, how does a devout Jain, someone strictly practicing nonviolence, end up funding a bloody guerrilla war? Well, Bhamashah's actions were deeply rooted in a fascinating concept called apat dharma, which translates to emergency ethics. This Jain principle essentially allows for extraordinary, normally prohibited measures to be taken for the greater good during dire circumstances. To Bhamashah, the Mughal conquest was an absolute existential threat to both freedom and religious communities. So backing the resistance financially was seen as a deeply ethical defensive act. But hey,
Money alone doesn't win a guerrilla war in the mountains, right? You need people who actually know the terrain. Enter the second pillar of this incredible coalition, the Bhil tribe. The Bhils are an ancient indigenous community living primarily in the western and central regions of India, especially the Aravalli Hills. Their name actually derives from the Dravidian word vil, meaning bow, and that perfectly reflects their traditional and frankly deadly mastery as archers. And this brilliantly illustrates how the Bhils leveled the playing field against a vastly superior imperial army. While the heavy, bulky Mughal forces struggled to move through the narrow, rugged mountain passes, the Bhils were in their element. They executed devastating hit-and-run guerrilla warfare, showering the enemy with arrows from hidden cliffs and vanishing before the Mughals could retaliate. And beyond the fighting, they were the ultimate logistical lifeline. They secured the passes, provided food and shelter to Pratap's hiding army, and acted as an unmatched network of intelligence spies. The relationship between the king and the tribe was deeply, deeply rooted in mutual respect. Maharana Pratap famously stated, "The Bhils are not just my subjects, they are my strength." Think about how revolutionary that kind of leadership was in a highly hierarchical 16th century society. Pratap treated the tribal warriors as equals. It was this bond of humanity and unity that really inspired the Bhils to fight relentlessly for their shared homeland. At the head of this tribal force was the legendary Rana Punja. Now, history is rarely simple, right? And today there is a complex, active debate regarding Rana Punja's exact identity. On one side, he's celebrated as a Bhil tribal chieftain who brilliantly mobilized his indigenous community. On the other side, regional records and descendants trace his lineage as a Rajput Solanki ruler who commanded the local Bhils. Now, we aren't here to solve this modern identity debate or take sides. We are simply exploring the historical complexity as it's presented in the sources. But honestly, what this modern tug-of-war over his identity truly proves is just how absolutely vital Rana Punja's leadership was. Whether you view him through the lens of a tribal chieftain or a Solanki Rajput, the historical fact is rock solid. Punja and his mountain infantry were instrumental. They executed the guerrilla tactics that devastated the Mughal rearguard at Haldighati, they blockaded Mughal forces, and they kept the resistance alive in the harshest conditions imaginable. And the amazing thing, the sacrifices of the Bhils were never forgotten by Mewar. In a completely unique first in Indian history, the Bhils were given equal status to any other citizen. This profound respect was literally cemented into royal tradition. For centuries, when a succession happened, a new Maharana was not officially recognized until a Bhil chieftain anointed him with a tilak made from the chieftain's own blood. Plus, if you look at the official royal coat of arms of Mewar, it proudly features a Rajput on one side and a Bhil warrior on the other, standing together. So the crucial point is that this legacy of unity and respect isn't just some ancient history, it is actively preserved today. Instituted back in the 1980s, the Rana Punja Award is given by the House of Mewar to honor extraordinary contributions to society by a person of tribal origin. Complete with a cash award and a ceremonial tour and plaque, it serves as a modern commemoration of that eternal trust and alliance between the Bhil tribesmen and the kingdom they helped save. Ultimately, the fight for Mewar wasn't just a single battle. It was a grueling, decades-long marathon. From the fall of Chittorgarh in 1568, pushing through that bloody stalemate at Haldighati, all the way to reclaiming the territory, this long road to recovery and the eventual recognition of Mewar's special independence status in 1614, none of it happens without the literal time that Bhamashah's wealth bought and the rugged territory that the Bhils so fiercely protected. So we're left with this really powerful realization. History usually just remembers the kings and the emperors. But as we've seen today, the miraculous resistance at Haldighati wasn't just a military victory of one man. It was a total triumph of civil, financial, and tribal unity. Bhamashah and the Bhil warriors remind us that behind every great historical stand is a diverse coalition of unsung heroes. It really makes you wonder, right? Who else is hiding in the margins of our history books, just waiting for their story to be told?